Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fandom Report. I'm your host, Catherine Mora, aka Miss Catherine Mora, and today I'm joined by Katie. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining. I know this was like kind of last minute, but thank you so much for hopping on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so to kind of clarify for everybody who's listening slash watching, we are filming this on Sunday, July 28th. Yesterday at San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel just randomly announced that RDJ is coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but
Oh
as
my God.
Doctor Doom.
New mask. Same task.
um,
Ugh.
yeah, so I mean, if you're watching this podcast, chances are you already know this, but this is brand new information for us. So yeah, Katie, you were like, I think you were like one of the first people I reached out to. I was like, Katie, oh my God.
Yes. Well, I think like you and I share a love for Tony Stark that is all too rare in the fandom right now, I feel
Mhm.
like. Um, but I had quite a few people being like, "Are you breathing? Are you okay?" Answer is no. So I have a lot to say and I'm very excited to talk to with you about this.
Yeah, no. So let's go right into it. Real quick though, I do want to also add for everybody listening, there will be spoilers for Deadpool and Wolverine in this episode, most likely, because there is some stuff I want to touch on in that movie that also pertains to RDJ coming back. But yeah, full spoiler alert for Deadpool and Wolverine. So if you haven't seen it yet, please exit the podcast and come back afterwards. But yeah, I want to start off real quick, Katie, with the fact that in Deadpool and Wolverine, like one of the very first scenes is Wade talking to Happy at, I'm assuming, Stark Industries. And
Yes.
then he's like, "Oh, is the big man coming?" I was gripping onto the sides of my chair because I'm like, and then, but then I'm sorry, I'm gonna give you a chance to talk. I'm just so excited, and
No,
you
go
get
ahead.
it,
You're
you
good.
get
You're
it.
good.
And then the fact that Happy is like, "Oh, he doesn't do this," and then Wade goes, "Oh, cameos." And looking back, I'm like, they were literally telling us, they were warning
I
us.
know. No, that's what's stressing me out so much is that so many interviews recently, RDJ has been like, I mean, I might be willing to come back. He's known. He's known he's coming
Mm-hmm.
back. And I guess that's why he seemed more open to the idea. But yeah, most stressful few minutes of my life.
Yeah.
Because not only am I a Tony stan, but I'm a Pepper
Mm-hmm.
stan. I'm like, who's coming in? Who is about to walk through that door right
Yeah.
now? Love Happy, but I was like, I was very nervous for what was
Oh,
about to happen.
100%. And then I don't know if you noticed, like in like the back wall behind Wade, there was the little helmet from Iron Man 2, which is technically Peter Parker, the little kid from.
No,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I know all the suits by
Yes.
heart. And I was looking at that helmet going, that is not an MCU suit. Who is that? And someone pointed it out on
Yeah.
Instagram. I can't believe I missed it that that is Peter's
Mm-hmm.
helmet. But I'm sitting there going, that is a weird faceplate. I've never seen that in my life.
But it's also sitting right in front of the internship photo from Endgame. It's also, it's like, and I understand like they cut the helmet is covering Peter because like I'm assuming it's a agreement issue with Sony.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, and I've seen some people saying like, "Oh, it's because Peter's been forgotten." But I'm like, no, 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 time out. It's still 2018 in this moment. Like, Peter is alive and well. He like because they show like I think it's like one of those little calendar with like the blocks things, and I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was like March 2018. I'm like, okay, so Thanos hasn't happened yet. The snap hasn't happened. Peter's fine. Tony, like everybody's fine.
Well, Peter's fine, but they still erased the memory of Peter from all of the past. So they remember Spider
Yeah,
Man,
no,
but I bet you, yeah,
I,
I don't know what happened to that specific
I
photo.
think so. The way I see it is that in that moment, Peter is still like chilling. He's because it's technically it's 2018, so technically he's fine. Like for me, it's from the moment Strange cast the spell in No Way Home. Like then people's memories get blurry. Like that's when like he gets erased. But like in 2018, in the moment, because you can kind of see like because then also if you think about like why would there be a photo of Tony just kind of having his arm just
And some
that
kid,
like
like
and some
some
kid
random ass kid,
some
you never
random kid or
know.
just like nobody there like so I'm like thinking okay it's like Peter's fine like he's still in in that moment at least like in everybody's memory but Yeah, it's happier. It's a happier thought.
I choose to believe that because I don't like to think about the
Hmm.
alternative. But yes, okay. So that's what kind of gets me too, is like I guess he would have been willing to come back as Tony in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I wonder if that was pitched to him, but he was like waiting for the Doctor Doom to be the big reveal, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me because I saw an interview where Kevin Feige was like, "Oh, let's maybe not do cocaine jokes, not because they're bad, but just because like they're old and stale." And then they made that whole bit about like the cocaine, like they can't make cocaine jokes or do cocaine in Deadpool and Wolverine. So I'm thinking, what if it was
Yeah,
something similar where RDJ was like, yeah, I could come back for a cameo, but like, why don't we just do like a really big reveal? Like, why don't we just like save it? And so then maybe he made it
yes.
into a joke, like they made it into a joke for the film. It's possible.
I mean, I like to think that he obviously cares a lot about the MCU. I like to think that he wouldn't come back unless it was for a big reason, which is why I've kind of doubted that he would come back just for a small cameo. Like if he's gonna come back, it's gonna be for something big, which I guess is this.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, he's doing fine. Let's be honest. Like, RDJ is fine. He just won an Oscar. He's
He
got
doesn't
plenty
need
of
the
money. Yes,
money.
he's got plenty of money. He's
Yeah.
doing okay. So for him to come back, I'm thinking it must have been they pitched a good story to him because vaguely remember that's something he's also said where he's like, I would come back if like the story was right, if the circumstances were right. So it must be that they pitched something to him that he really resonated with, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it because he could do anything at this point.
Yeah, to preface this, I don't know a ton about Doctor Doom.
Yeah, same.
I'm new to comics. I know what people have told me. I know a little bit about his character. Um, but from what I understand, Tony Stark and Doctor Doom have a lot of similarities, especially like comics wise. So it does make some sense. And I think that, I would love to see RDJ do more villain stuff. And I think acting wise, I think he'll probably do a phenomenal job. It's just such a strange decision for them to make because they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Okay, where I'm kind of at with this decision is, well, number one, I really, really hope this is not a variant of Tony Stark. I I'm just really, really scared for them to bring back Tony in any capacity because I think his ending was so perfect. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm very, very protective over Tony and his legacy. Um, and I don't know if I trust them to not mess it up. With that said, we did just have more Deadpool Wolverine spoilers. We did just have a variant of Logan come back, and they very much honored the original Logan's legacy and sacrifice. So it is possible to be done well. But I also just think that does, like, making him a Tony variant only just does a disservice to Doom's character. And I think we're done. I think it's okay to just let him rest. Like, let Tony rest and have a new character come up, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I agree. And like also I feel like every time, and specifically in What If, like every time there's a Tony variant, like 9 times out of 10 they kill him. And I'm like, can we stop, please?
Don't get me started.
It's rough being a Tony stan in this day and age.
It is.
Yeah, and it's so I have a few theories, and I'm watch it like be none of these things when the movie finally comes out. So it's either it's a Tony variant, it's I remember I hope this is correct. I like vaguely remember in the comics that Tony Stark has a twin brother. Like yeah,
What?
yeah, they're it's like a whole I think it was like a whole separated at birth kind of a thing. Like
Where have I
or
been?
like
I didn't
yeah,
know that.
I think it's a twin brother, or they were like the babies were switched in the hospital or something like that. Yeah, this is
Well, Tony was adopted in the comics, so maybe it was
something
like
real.
they were
Yeah,
both adopted by different people. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
something like that. And it's either it's like gonna be the twin brother, or it's gonna be like a variant of the twin brother, or it's just gonna be Doom. And Doom just in that universe just happens to look like Tony Stark in the sacred timeline.
Well, hopefully, so from what I understand, Doom doesn't really take off his helmet, and that's like kind of a big thing. If it's just RDJ, like, and they really just wanted to cast him acting wise because he suits the role, and he doesn't take his helmet off, we don't like maybe if Deadpool's there, he makes like a Tony joke, but other than that, this is Victor Von Doom. This is a separate character, and it just happens to be RDJ. I'm fine. I'm excited. That's great. I also, if it is a Tony variant, I am a big. Are you familiar with Superior Iron Man?
Yes. Yeah.
I love Superior Iron Man so much, and they could kind of do that
Hmm.
with this, I guess. I don't. I just don't think we need it. Like, don't get me wrong. With my own personal bias, they mention Tony Stark, and I lose my mind. Like, I was hoping for a cameo, like just for my own benefit. But storytelling wise, I feel like they're relying on the nostalgia of Tony so much. Like they're trying to push this narrative, like guys, it's a new era, it's a new dawn, it's a new day, and then they don't trust their own storytelling ability, or they don't trust ticket sales enough to not rely on the nostalgia of the Infinity Saga. And that's I don't like that. I feel like they don't have faith in themselves, like Marvel.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, I totally get it. And I've definitely seen that being brought up online where people saying, "Oh, this feels like a cash grab. It feels like lazy casting." And I every time I feel like that, I just go back to the thought of how for RDJ, who was like so resistant, especially post Endgame, to come back for like any reason. And when he was pressed, he was like, it would have to be the right circumstances, it would have to be the right story. That gives me a little bit of hope that there's like a reason, there's a story reason behind it that we're not seeing just yet. On the other hand, to quote Wade pretending to be Logan, nothing brings me back to life like a big bag of Marvel cash. So that could
Yeah, I
also
know
be it.
exactly. Like they're gonna make him do this till he's 90.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
It's possible. I mean, I was doing a little bit of research into Doom before this, because likewise, I'm also not very well versed in him, and just I'm not 100% sure like who this guy is. Besides, I know Fantastic Four, main villain of the Fantastic Four. He's like the king of his own country that he like took over or something like that. He's like
Yeah,
brilliant.
Latveria,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I know a little bit. Who else is this guy? And he does play like a major role in Secret Wars. So I'm like, okay, it makes sense that he's like the he's gonna be the main villain for the next two Avengers films. Because so my understanding, Secret Wars is that a bunch of heroes and villains get like sent to this other place called Battle World, where they basically have to fight each other, but they're like enticed to come with like promises that their dreams will come true, something along those lines. um
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah,
And Doom essentially is like the quote unquote leader of the villains, because they break off into factions. Like the X-Men are doing their own thing, and the heroes, they're all kind of, so Doom is essentially the leader. But then the person who like takes them all there is called the Beyonder, and he's like super powerful. And Doom at one point like absorbs the Beyonder's powers and basically becomes like the most powerful being in the entire like universe essentially. It's like, okay, so something's gonna happen. My theory is that like maybe the Beyonder is like in Doomsday, and like Doomsday ends with like Doom getting the Beyonder's powers and then going into Secret Wars.
okay.
Maybe, I don't know. Marvel likes to twist things, like the Marvel Studios, they like to, take things from the comics and twist them a little bit. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, for me, RDJ, like he is Tony. He's such a good actor though that if he has the mask on all the time, if he doesn't have the mask on all the time, I think that his own like love that he has for Tony Stark will push him to like really work to make a distinction between Tony and Victor. And I mean we won't know till we see it. We're not going to know like how it turns out until the movie's actually out, and even then there's going to be people, who are disappointed, people who love it. But I mean, like you, I'm just very biased. Like
Yeah.
I love this man. Before it was like yesterday, before it was announced, like I was doing like an Ask Me Anything on my Instagram, and somebody's like, "Who's your favorite Marvel actor?
I saw
Who's
this.
your favorite Marvel actor?" And I put a picture of RDJ, and I was like, I just really miss him. And then like 3 hours later, bam! I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh my god. No, I literally so I was with my brother yesterday who's just as big of a Marvel fan as I am, and we're like craziest predictions for the Hall H panel. And he mentioned that there was a rumor of RDJ playing Doom, and I immediately shut it down. I was like, nah, that's not happening. Like, no way. They're not gonna get him. But I was like, my craziest prediction, Tony is confirmed for Ironheart. Like, so like I wanted him to be back in some capacity, kind of. I'm very, like I said, I'm very tentative about it because I don't want them to mess it up. But yeah, when I saw that it was revealed, I almost just didn't believe them. I was like, my mutual mind DM'd me, and I was like, no, no way. Like, This is a fan theory. This is like a fan fiction. This is not true. Like,
No,
it's
100%.
insane.
Absolutely. Like I'm on the same page. Like a friend of mine sent me the link, and it was I think it was like a Hollywood Reporter Variety, like like they're not going to announce anything if they don't have their sources. Like this is one of those like trade papers, and he sent it to me, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this isn't real. There's no way this is real. I don't believe this. What do you mean he's coming back as Victor Von Doom? So I go over to Instagram, and I see the moment that I see the poster, Doomsday coming out 2026. I see the video, him ripping off the mask on stage. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, wow, this is really happening. Okay.
Yes, and literally just after again, Deadpool Wolverine spoilers, the fact that we just got Chris Evans back as Johnny Storm, and now RDJ is coming back. I mean, well, first of all, this proves that there could be variants in the multiverse of two different characters that look the same.
Yes.
So if he is Victor, it can make canon sense. But it's just, I mean, what that does say to me, and what is very reassuring to me, is that like these actors did enjoy working with the MCU enough to want to come back. Like, I feel like with these big franchises, it can be very hit or miss. And, I'm a Star Wars fan. It makes me happy that they are willing to work with them again. And, like, that means that they love the franchise enough that they wouldn't, like, completely write it off. But you're right with what you were saying. I mean, I trust RDJ as an actor more than anything. I think he's brilliant. And I don't think he would half-ass this. And this also is going to be the Russos, which I know people are having some mixed opinions about. Okay, they've done some things to certain characters that I'm not a fan of. They make good movies. And you know what else they do well? They are able, sorry, I'm going a little off topic. Okay. Infinity War and Endgame, they are able to take a ton of different storylines and characters all at the same time and give them all the time they deserve, make it all a cohesive story. Like, Infinity War is the best example of that I've ever seen. If anyone is going to do Secret Wars, I do trust them to do it.
Yes, okay. For those of you who are listening and not watching on YouTube, I was just pointing at Katie like crazy because 100% spot on. Oh my God. Okay. So there a lot that I want to respond to, and I hope I don't forget anything. Okay. So one of the first things I put on my stories on Instagram after seeing this news was like, I take back every bad thing I've ever said about the Russo brothers. Like, and the thing is, if you followed me for a while on social media, you know that I've had a lot of critiques towards the Russo brothers about
valid, very valid.
Because and being a Tony stan, I feel like that's to be expected. They killed off my favorite character.
Yep. Uh-huh.
And I also a lot of feelings about them being like very like biased towards Steve Rogers. It was a whole thing. Anyway, we can pack that. We can dig into that another time. It's true, they know how to make an incredible movie. I 100% agree. And the fact that it's not Tony Stark anymore gives me a little more confidence in how like RDJ's story will unravel in these movies, in that he will be the villain, and they did such an incredible job with Thanos. They basically built Thanos' character, because before we had, brief little moment, he was a very one-dimensional villain prior to Infinity War. And then Thanos is basically the main character in Infinity War. Like he not only does he have the most screen time, it's literally his story. He's going through his own hero's journey, so to speak. And he wins at the end. And I love a movie where the bad guy wins, like Empire, Infinity War. I love a good like the bad guys win movie. So we can kind of guess that's what's going to happen with Doomsday. Like, Doom is going to win. The Avengers are going to be in like a really bad spot. Like, yes. So I had my issues with the Russo brothers, but seeing how well they developed Thanos' story, like, I'm like, okay, they clearly have something planned for Doom. And the fact that, RDJ, they've worked with him multiple times, and they wanted him to be Doom. Like, their people reached out to his people, basically. Like, this was their pitch to him. So they love RDJ, and they clearly love Marvel enough, like you were saying, like they, not just the cast, but like these directors, the Russo brothers, they love Marvel enough that they want to come back to do more movies. And I I hope that they don't like feel too much pressure to try to top Infinity War and Endgame. Like that was its own thing. Like it's going to be very hard to top that because it was just such a different time and such a different like feeling in that moment. I hope they just kind of focus on making Doomsday and Secret Wars its own thing. And also like the fact that we kind of saw this coming, but the fact that they swerved from Kang Dynasty over to Doomsday is like, whoa.
Yes.
um
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's an elephant in the room we haven't said
yes.
yet, and it's the fact that it is no longer King Dynasty.
Yeah, which I mean, again, in hindsight, like it makes sense. It would have been interesting if they cast somebody else to play Kang, especially because they're bringing back another actor to play a different character. If that makes sense, that you could have cast multiple people actually to play different variants of Kang. So interesting direction that they decided to move into. I did see somebody was saying, so does this mean that they have to kind of go back and do like a Loki season 2.5 to kind of to kind of make it fit? I'm like, no. Kang was a bump in the road at this point. Like he was like a Ronin or a Red Skull. Like he was just a villain that we had to get through to now go on to Doom at this point,
I
I
know,
guess.
I unfortunately, obviously, we don't have to go into the details of everything. I think Kang is fascinating. I think I loved him in Quantumania, even though that specific Kang, I actually don't remember how Quantumania ended. I think he's done.
Yeah, he's done.
There's a whole council of Kangs
Yeah.
I know we'll eventually have to deal with, but I think the whole thing with Kang is that he can attack at any point in time, so it doesn't have to be something that we tackle right this second. Maybe the Kang decide to attack a point in the timeline that we haven't gotten to yet. But I do know the little that I know about Secret Wars, I do know that Doom is a very important part of it. So there was kind of a chance that we would be balancing both Kang and Doom at the same time in these two Avengers movies, and introducing a new villain while also having that would have been too much. I think it honestly is probably better that we're just focusing on one. There is another elephant in the room I do want to mention, is that Doctor Doom is a Romani character. And this would be the third time that Marvel takes a Romani character and erases that part of their identity.
Yeah.
Not to bring down the mood, but it is an interesting choice, and not like we were making such great progress towards like cultural representation in the MCU, and now suddenly they're like, our favorite white man has returned, and he's my favorite white man too, but it's still not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little stressed.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I feel like it's easy for them to be like, no, actually it's okay because, in the multiverse there are variants. This just happens to be a variant. Like I feel like that's probably the response. That's probably like the line that they'd have for any, questions about that. It's I mean, in general, when a studio does something like this, I'm not surprised.
I'm unfortunately not shocked.
It's not shocking. It's something that like continues to happen, and I feel like it's one of those situations, especially because it's RDJ within the MCU, that people are just gonna accept it and move on. Or I feel like a lot of people won't even question it or even think too much about it. And that's not to be like, people, I'm not trying to say like people are, ignorant or anything like that. I just also, there's a lot
absolutely.
of people who like maybe don't necessarily read the comics, who don't necessarily know this about Doom, so they don't see anything wrong with it.
It's a weird choice, but I mean, I feel like I'm gonna feel the same way about it. And obviously, I'm not Romani, so I'm not like the number one person to speak on this. For example, like Wanda, Elizabeth Olsen does a phenomenal performance. That I love her Wanda so much. I do wish they cast a Romani actor, but the character that we did end up with is someone that I really love. I feel like it's gonna be the same type of thing where I want to recognize them and hold them accountable for it, but it might be a result I end up really enjoying as well. Yeah, I feel like my reaction to this is excitement, but also fear, but also confusion. My fear is coming in with the fact that everyone is saying he's either going to be a Tony variant or a Tony variant is going to show up in Secret Wars. And I am just so, as much as I like I miss Tony like he is a real person. I genuinely mourn this character. However, I am so on the train of like, don't bring him back, don't mess it up. So that's where my, to circle back a little bit, that's where my fear is coming from. I think,
Yeah. So,
but it's yeah.
it's funny, not funny, but like you mentioning that, it reminds me of a TikTok I saw earlier today. It was by Trista, who we love.
Oh my god, Trista!
Who we
I love
love.
her.
Shout out Trista. She did a TikTok, and basically it was said that like in Secret Wars, Peter Parker is probably going to see Doom. And yes, and it's gonna be like he's gonna think it's Tony, and obviously Doom doesn't know who this kid is, so Peter's gonna think. So all that to say, because not only am I like a huge Tony Stark stan, I love Iron Dad with all of my soul.
I
I love
love
Iron Dad so much. So I feel like the only way I would be okay with like a Tony variant of any sort is so that Peter can actually get some closure. Because I know everybody's like, oh, that chapter of Peter's life is done. Like, he got his closure with Far From Home. I'm like, he didn't necessarily get closure, I don't think. I think it was more that he just kind of grew and like grew with the grief and like accepted that he could stand on his own 2 feet. But I don't think he necessarily got closure from like that loss, especially because he's all alone now. So the only way that this works for me, if it's a Tony variant, is if there's some sort of like final page for Peter Parker and Tony Stark in some sense.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I love that. I think what could be fun is if they did a similar thing that they did in like Deadpool and Wolverine with Johnny Storm. If they make some joke about it, like, oh my god, Tony, or Peter's like, oh my god, Tony, thank god you're here, I thought you were gone. And he's like, who's Tony? And like, does something crazy. But like,
Winter Soldier's him.
I think they need to. No, it's gonna be something like that. And if Deadpool's there, he'll be calling him Iron Man and doing all that, and like that's fine. What I think might need to happen for me to be okay with this is, so like what they did with Logan, and what I loved is that they had him take a similar arc that the Fox Universe Logan had. I need them to do the exact opposite with this. This character needs to be so separate from Tony that even if he is some alternate version of Tony, we are not looking at the two as nearly the same person. Like, I said the same thing when we thought Superior Iron Man was going to be in Multiverse of Madness. I'm going to say it again. Is like, I need them to have the same amount of care that they took with Logan's arc, but take the exact opposite road. So like, if he has some sort of relationship with this version of Peter, I'm okay with that, but I don't want it to reflect the MCU's version, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I agree 100%. It actually reminds me, hold on, let me pull it up real quick. It reminds me something you were saying before too, where it's like we've had actors come back and play, different variants, different characters, like Chris Evans doing Cap and doing Johnny Storm. Josh Brolin, he did Cable and Thanos. So
yeah. In Eternals, oh my god,
yes,
Cersei was also,
she was a Kree.
Yeah.
So we've done this before, and I get it. It's very different. Like, Tony Stark is still more or less the face of the MCU. So it's a good thing he's going to be wearing a mask most of the time, most likely.
Yeah, exactly.
But hold on, there was a text that my friend sent me. I was like, this is so he said, Doom is horribly disfigured and wears armor all the time, so it's not a stretch that RDJ can play it and not break continuity. Josh Brolin played Cable and Thanos in 2 movies that came out the same summer, even though they were different franchises.
No.
Yeah.
But they are now confirmed to be the same multiverse. That's exactly what I'm saying. If he keeps that mask on, this is not going to be an issue. And that is more true to Doom's character as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like taking Josh Brolin, for example, like Cable, Thanos, completely different characters. Completely different storylines, different personalities and everything. So, Tony Stark, he had his story, he was his own thing. Now, going back to before, like, RDJ has such a love for Tony Stark that he's going to make an effort to do something different for Doom. Like, he's going to make an effort. I really do believe that he's going to make an effort to really separate the 2 characters and make sure that there is no confusion, there is no overlap. I mean, come on, the man won an Oscar this year. Like, he's more than capable.
He did, and it was for a villain role.
Yes.
Surprisingly, I still have not seen Oppenheimer, believe it or not.
So good.
But I mean, I honestly, the whole plot just makes me really anxious. I couldn't see it in theaters because it was like, IMAX, it feels like you're there. I'm like, no, I'm
I don't
gonna
want
have
to be
anxiety
there.
attack. Exactly. But from what I understand and from like clips I've seen and stuff, he is the very like, kind of calculated cold villain, and he can do that really well. From an acting perspective, I'm so excited to see him play two different characters in the same universe. That's awesome. You know what I just thought of?
Tell me.
Kind of off
Tell
topic.
me.
I'm scared that this is what they're
Oh,
gonna
no.
do. You know the whole thing that Deadpool and Wolverine made canon of anchor beings?
Yes. Oh,
What
no.
if they're like, Victor Von Doom is actually Tony Stark, and that's why the MCU movies are continuing, because Tony was the anchor being, and now a new Tony is here. I'm gonna punch someone in the face.
Okay.
That's what happened.
So what I thought you were going to say, that Tony Stark was the anchor being. And that's what's
No, that's what I'm saying.
like, no, but
so he
like,
was, but they're saying that now that a Tony variant is in the sacred timeline, that's why they can continue. Because like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If the anchor being is absent for too long, the universe stops. So they're gonna be like, nope, the universe is gonna continue because a new Tony Stark is here, and it's Victor Von Doom. I'm gonna go insane.
I don't know if that would work though, because wasn't it that Wolverine and Wade were like both the anchor beings now because they basically saved the multiverse. I thought that's what it was.
I think it was that they got their Wolverine back because he reflected their old Logan. I think is how, because it was saying like, I'm seeing it again tomorrow. Yeah. I need to see it again to fully, because I was kind of just taking everything in. I think what happened was that because they had a Wolverine, like Logan at the beginning when he first came back wouldn't be able to just pop into that universe and replace the previous Logan because he wasn't enough like him, like he wasn't that same character. But then once he like became that hero, it would work, I think.
Okay. Yes, I can see that. Yeah,
you might be right. I might have missed that. I was. Listen, Logan was shirtless. I wasn't listening to anything they were saying. I'm being so serious. Nothing that they were saying was going in my brain. Logan's shirt popped off, and I was the only one in the theater who went, "Woo!" That was like cheering.
Kind of a side note. I mean, yes, that was fabulous. But the moment it hit the shirt, just like the top just burst off of his body, I literally went like, "Oh my god!" Because on the one hand, it was like, "Hello," but on the other hand, it was like, "Really?"
I thought it was hilarious, and I was the target audience for that bit. I am, other than Tony, my other like Marvel husband, love of my life is Logan. If this, okay, yeah. Sorry. If this means that the two of them are going to be in a movie together,
oh my goodness,
I don't think I will survive. I will have to do a part 2 of this podcast because I will be like, you have to pick me up off the ground sobbing. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Well, I mean, what we more or less know for certain is that RDJ and Pedro Pascal are gonna share the screen at some point in the MCU. Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, we haven't even, I'll be so honest, I kind of forgot everything else that happened at Hall H because I was a little distracted. So we got Fantastic Four. It's definitely
it's
Galactus and Silver Surfer.
It looks like they did cast someone for Galactus, and I'm not even going to attempt to say his last name because I will butcher it. I'm so sorry, but his name is Ralph. His first name is Ralph.
Ralph.
Oh yes, I know him. I know. Where do I know him from? I know him from something. I do. Oh, he was, and also he was a Ravager in Guardians of the Galaxy. So there you go.
There we go. Another example.
There you go. See, you can bring back actors to play different roles.
I do still think it's a weird choice, but it's not one that's gonna ruin canon. You know?
Yeah, especially at this stage in the multiverse. I feel like once the multiverse is in play, like anything is on the table. It's all up for grabs.
Honestly, I'm getting kind of sick of it. Like, multiverse stuff is cool, but I feel like every franchise right now is relying on it so heavily. Like, we got Spider-Verse, which obviously is incredible. Invincible's doing it. Marvel's doing it. DC was doing it. And it's like, I'm a little multiversed out at the moment.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
I'm getting a little, like, tired right now. So when I got, like, when these were the pretty much main announcements that we got, were like, and the multiverse is bigger. I'm like, confirm Ironheart. Give me something more grounded, like, that I can watch right now, you know?
So not to keep banging on this drum, especially for, again, people who have listened to this podcast before, who've listened to me on social media, I have been very frustrated with how Marvel has done the multiverse in general. To start off, when Kevin Feige was like announcing a bunch of movies, I think like right before COVID hit, that he was like, oh, and the multiverse of mad, like WandaVision is going to lead directly into multiverse of madness. So you're thinking, okay, cool. There's going to be like multiverse stuff happening in WandaVision, and awesome. So then Evan Peters pops up. I'm still so mad about this. I'm still so frustrated about this because I'm like, yes, you know what? You guys just bought 20th Century Fox. You have the rights. Like, if WandaVision is going to lead straight into the multiverse of madness, like, it makes sense. Here's a multiversal character that you can use to, like, lead. No, he was a boner joke.
Ralph Boner?
Boner.
Then, moving on, Multiverse of Madness, I'm like, for a movie that's called Multiverse of Madness, like, there wasn't a lot of multiverse stuff happening.
There was one other universe. We went to 838 and, like, that
was it. Like, all the other universes, they were, like, just, like, somersaulting through in, like, the span of 30 seconds. Like, we should have been multiverse hopping, like, repeatedly. Like, you can't call it the Multiverse of Madness if you only go to one other universe. Then it's like the Earth, what was it, Earth 838 or whatever of madness. That's it. And then,
and like, that's what I thought Deadpool Wolverine was gonna be too, which is fine that it wasn't. But I'm sitting there, I'm like, we've been in the void for an hour, and I thought we were, well, first of all, I thought we were going to Age of Ultron, so I'm upset.
I thought so too.
But yeah, I think everyone did, and that is like one of my favorite movies ever, so I'm mad about it. But it's fine that it wasn't, but I'm like, they keep advertising these things as if it's gonna be what Spider-Verse did. Spider-Verse did it well. And then now it's like all these other movies are like, we'll give you a few cameos, but we're gonna stay in the same universe the whole time, and that's about it.
See, it's funny that you say that because I thought Deadpool and Wolverine was the first Marvel movie, like MCU movie, to do it well. Like, besides No Way Home.
Really?
No Way Home did a really good job. I should apologize. No Way Home did a phenomenal job. Besides No Way Home, I feel like, and even so, that was still technically Sony, even if it's under the MCU umbrella. I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine was the first one to do it really well, because even though they weren't multiversal hopping, the fact they were in the void, like, that's kind of where all quote-unquote multiversal trash, for the lack of a better term, I can't think of it, like, all these variants that get, like, rejected from the universes because the universes get pruned or whatever, like, they all end up in the same place. So for me, like, the fact that they were just kind of there for a long time worked, because
it worked. It just wasn't what I felt like they advertised it as.
That's
if
fair.
That makes sense. I loved it, but they advertised it as if it was going to be, and we're traveling the entire multiverse, and then they just did.
So I wonder, did you watch all of the trailers before seeing the movie?
Yes.
I did not. I only watched the teaser.
Interesting.
I only watched the teaser.
You only watched the teaser?
Because I wanted
really?
to avoid any potential spoilers. After they showed the Falcon in the Ant-Man trailer, I stopped watching trailers. When the first Ant-Man movie came out, when the first Ant-Man movie was coming out, in one of the trailers, they revealed that Sam Wilson was going to be in the movie. They spoiled that cameo in the trailer. I was so pissed off that from that moment, I swore off trailers until after I saw the movie. I watched the teaser, and that's it until I see the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, for this one, well, first of all, I'm a newer. I didn't watch my first MCU movie. I didn't watch Iron Man 1 until the month before Endgame came out. So I'm very new, like, you know, for lack of a better word. But what pissed me off, Deadpool Wolverine, they announced X-23 like a day before the movie came out.
Yep.
That bothers me. But then again, sometimes the trailers misdirect us on purpose. Like, I thought Multiverse of Madness, I thought they were in the TVA, and I thought Loki was good. Like, you know, so it's hit or miss for me. But you're right. They do show off a lot. I watched every trailer because I was like, any ounce of Logan content I can get, I'm going to see. And I was like, oh my God, he has his arms out. Yay, let's watch the trailer. But like, I'm crazy. But you're right. They did show, I think that did change my idea of what the movie was gonna be, because I watched so many of the trailers. So
yeah, I think that's probably why we definitely went into it with like different perspectives and different expectations. And I think maybe that's why the movie, I think, is like one of the best multiversal things that Marvel has done, because I wasn't expecting, I didn't know what to expect. And so we're seeing, and again, if you are still listening and you haven't seen the movie, a buttload of spoilers coming in. We got Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. We got Jennifer Garner
Yes.
as Elektra. We got Wesley Snipes as Blade. We got freaking Channing Tatum as live action Gambit,
That was crazy.
which was insane to me. I lost my mind. Also, I like when Chris Evans shows up first, you don't see his face. I heard the voice. I'm like, oh my freaking gosh, it's Chris Evans. Oh my gosh. But then they did this on purpose. I know they did. You see red, white, and blue on his arm.
Yep, I knew. I thought, I'm like, oh my god,
It's
Cap's
a cat.
here.
I was like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, he's in like some sort of like hood. It looks a little medievalish. Like maybe he's like a medieval variant of like a Captain America or whatever. And then he said "Flame on." I was the only one in my theater who screamed, but I did scream. My theater sucked for this movie. I screamed. I'm like, oh, what? And then we also had like so many like not there weren't like background actors or extras, but like the lesser, not lesser, I don't know what's the right term for it, but like a lot of mutants, a lot of the mutant cast, a lot of them were there. Like Azazel was there, Toad was there, the Pyro was there, like so many people.
Did I see Psylocke?
Yes, she was there.
Yeah.
Psylocke was there. I forget her name, but like the one with like the fingernails. Like
I don't remember her. She
but she was there. Like all of these characters, I'm like, this is what Multiverse of Madness should have been. Like this is like a multiverse film. And again,
you're right. They did it super well. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say like, and you know, again, me going in with like no expectations, I didn't know what to expect. So this was like, it worked for me. But yes, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, they did it extremely well. I loved the movie. I always have to see movies like this twice, and I haven't seen it the second time yet. Because the first time I go in with with expectations, and it's just different from what I expected. That's not a good or bad thing. It's just like, oh, that clip of them in the trailer jumping through the Strange portal, I think that to me told me, okay, they're going to be hopping all around. Because every trailer had that damn shot in it. So that's what I thought was going to be a major part of the movie, was them hopping around. So when I was sitting there, I'm like, we've been here for a bit. It's not a bad thing. It's just not what I was like expecting to go in with. But you're right. We did. The other thing is that I'm an MCU. Like, MCU is my favorite. Like, I'm an Infinity Saga girly. I was hoping for a few more callbacks to that. I know that wasn't the point of the movie. But we kept getting cameos. Like, I didn't realize that was Channing Tatum until I left the theater.
Oh.
And I called my mother, who, by the way, is not a Marvel stan, but she saw this movie. I don't know. She was like, and Channing Tatum was there. I was like, as who? What do you mean? Like, I wasn't in the fandom back then, so I didn't know why he would be cast as Gambit. Like, there were some things that I personally missed. But, no, you're right. They did it extremely well. And because this movie was so good and had so much heart along with fan service, this does give me faith for the direction that we're going in. It just, to bring it back a little bit, it does, because I know you just did an episode about this movie with Stella. I haven't listened to it yet.
It's all good.
But it does give me some faith for where we're going, and that they are making fan servicey choices while also giving them heart and meaning. It just, same thing when Deadpool Wolverine was announced. I'm like, oh god, what is this gonna be? It's just the fear of the unknown.
Yes, and part of me wonders like how much of it was thanks to Ryan Reynolds, and I'm assuming it was a large part of it was thanks to Ryan Reynolds, because you can just tell like how much he loves the fact that he was so excited to play in the sandbox, and he took full advantage. And I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for the whole time, and I'm so grateful for him for doing that. Him and like every other creative mind who was involved in this movie, like, thank you, because Marvel has all of these toys now, and they were ignoring like half of them for so long. There's so many possibilities they could have played with, and I think a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine is the perfect place to do like the fan servicey kind of things. You can still do fan service like in a more serious movie. Like I've always said, I think Multiverse of Madness should not have been a Doctor Strange movie. I think it should have just been like Marvel Studios Multiverse of Madness. Because then it became more about Strange. Yeah, exactly. It became more about Strange, which, and his whole journey is questionable in that film, as opposed to like being about the multiverse at large and like the existential threats and everything. I think a movie like that, you can still have the fan servicey moments, just has to make it more serious. Like, for example, Chris Evans comes back as Johnny Storm. He's not gonna like fall down on his private parts and have his skin ripped off in a movie like that. Like, he's gonna die, a little more like traumatizing way. But things like that, like you can still make the fan service work. And I know there's like gonna be plenty of fanboys who are like, ah, blah, blah, blah. Like, well, there'll be fanboys who are like screaming, like, losing their minds that they love it. But there'll also be those who are like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, why does Marvel do this? Like, why, like, why are we blah 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 blah. I can't even come up with something because it's like such a stupid concept to like get upset about something like this. um, but yeah, I'm also like very hopeful that they'll see the positive response that people have to those fan service moments and to like bringing back these actors to just even briefly cameo these roles. I hope that they see the positive reaction and that they moving forward will be like, yeah, we can do more of this, especially in Secret Wars where it's like
Yeah.
they're all going to this other place like Battle World where they're gonna fight each other. Like, bring, like, especially because they're going to be fighting each other, so that's how you can do the cameos, because it can just be fight scenes and so and so's there, oh so and so got killed, or oh so and so got their head chopped. There's a lot of things you can do.
I agree. I don't want them to rely on that, and that's where I feel like we're treading a line. I don't want them to rely on like, oh, well, even if the movie doesn't have like, even if there's no meaning for it, let's bring RDJ back just to get the money back or just because fans will love it. Like, but like we said before, I feel okay about it. I just hope they don't cross that line. I have a lot of friends who are like, they felt like Deadpool Wolverine was too fan servicing that they're losing faith in the direction of the MCU. I had kind of the opposite reaction.
Yeah, I did too. And again, I feel like for me at least, it's because I just was not happy with what they had been doing with the multiverse so far. And I thought this was like a great way to kind of approach the multiverse in general. But
Yeah.
this is, and going back to something you said earlier in this episode, that the Russo brothers did such an incredible job of weaving all of these storylines together in Infinity War. We had all these different plot lines happening and it's a huge cast, and each storyline has multiple characters. Like it's like full teams in each of these storylines, and then some of the teams break off, or they go off, and like for example the Guardians, like Thor meets up with the Guardians, goes off with Rocket and Groot, but then they end up over in Wakanda with the Avengers on Earth. Like the way that they woven, I don't know, whatever the past tense of wove is, or of weave, the way they brought all those threads together made this beautiful tapestry of a movie. And it's things like that gives me confidence that for Doomsday, for Secret Wars, regardless of the cast size, regardless of how many cameos, they will know how to approach all of this and bring it. And I'm not sure who the writers are. I don't know if Marcus and McFeely, who wrote Infinity War and Endgame, if they're gonna be the ones who come back and write this, because
Probably.
because again, we always want to give props to the writers, because writers are a huge part of making movies what they are, and the directors helping execute that vision. This team, whoever they are, especially because the Russo brothers have like such a status in the MCU, I feel like whoever the writers are, they will be collaborating with the Russos to write the script. And so they're going to work on this, and they're going to put a lot of work on this, because it's going to be so bad for them to come back to Marvel after doing Infinity War and Endgame only to like make two flops. Like that's not, I doubt they will. I doubt they will, because they are so good, but that's what I'm saying. Like they don't want that. They themselves don't want that to happen. So they're going to put in the work to make it a really great movie. And at the end of the day, like, just going back, like even Civil War had a huge cast, and they still managed to I don't necessarily agree with how Civil War ended. I was team Iron Man, but they still, you get it, but they still, like, regardless of what team you were on, like they still gave so much time to these characters to let them, like, to have their stories told. And so it makes me think a lot of not to jump fandoms, but like it makes me think a lot of like Game of Thrones in the earlier seasons, where like there were so many different storylines happening, and then at the end they all came together. That's exactly what they did in like a 3-hour movie for Infinity War.
Civil War is a great example of taking a comic storyline and making it apply to the MCU, because I've read the Civil War comics. That is a comic series I can speak on. And there is a lot. It is difficult to do Civil War without mutants and Inhumans. There are a lot of characters missing in Civil War in the MCU. And although I do wish it was done a bit differently, I think that is a great way to take inspiration from a comic storyline and apply it to the MCU in a way that works and makes sense. I feel like they have the knowledge to do the same thing with Secret Wars. I don't know a ton about Secret Wars. I'm going to read it in preparation for this movie coming out, but I do have faith in the Russos as well to take inspiration from a comic storyline and do it in a way that works for the story that they've been setting up. I do believe in them, and I also think that I think you and I might disagree with this based on what you were saying earlier, but I love, as much as I hate that Tony died, I think they ended his arc perfectly. Mm-hmm. So I think that they have enough respect for the character to take all of the weight that RDJ being here holds. I think that they're going to take it seriously. And I also feel like what Ryan Reynolds did with Deadpool and Wolverine, I bet you RDJ is going to have some collaboration with the writers and some creative decisions as well. So I'm nervous, but I have faith.
Yes. No, I agree.
There was one more thing I wanted to add. I don't want any version of Tony to have to see what is going on in the multiverse. That poor man could barely handle aliens coming down into New York, and that was just on one timeline. I don't think he could physically handle seeing the multiverse. Like when Kang showed up and everyone was like, oh my god, what if Tony comes back? Like, if he saw the Council of Kangs, he would explode. And I don't think, poor thing, I just want him to rest.
Yeah.
I don't want him to have to go through any of this.
No, and I hear you, and that goes back to what you were just saying about like how they ended his arc. Like literally the last thing anyone says to him is Pepper telling Tony he can rest now.
I know.
I'm so sorry to hurt you like this.
It's okay. Just please
let him rest. And I think that I wouldn't doubt that there is discussion being thrown around, like behind closed doors at Marvel Studios. Do we bring back a variant of Tony Stark? Do we do a flashback of Tony Stark? Like, do we touch Tony Stark at all in the upcoming films? I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they have to, especially because RDJ is back. Whatever they do, as I feel like as long as it doesn't undo the ending.
Yeah, like the AI Tony storyline, that would undo his ending because he saved his a backup of his consciousness. As long as we aren't messing with his storyline, you're right. Yeah.
Like as long as it's not messing with the storyline, if it's, you were saying earlier, if it's like a variant like they did with Logan, it's a different Tony, fine. If it's like a flashback of some sorts, fine, because that doesn't really impact his how he dies, also fine. I think as long as at the end of the films, what happened to him in Endgame is still what happened to him in Endgame, and it doesn't like take away his sacrifice or anything like that, I think we'll be fine. I as much as I hate that he died, like my preference would have been that he can just live happily ever after on his farm. Like maybe Peter visits them like on the weekends or during like summer vacation or something like that. Like he's fine, he's happy, he and Pepper are raising Morgan. You know, that would be my preference. That's what fan fiction is for. But you know, I think especially because it's been 6 years at this point, like I've accepted that is the reality. Tony's gone. So much has happened at the MCU also at this point that it's like bringing him back just wouldn't make sense. Yeah. So yeah, I think, and I think you said this before, if they approach it with the same care that they approached Logan's character in Deadpool and Wolverine, I think we'll be okay.
I agree.
All right, everybody, that's it for this episode of the FANDOM Report. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you, Katie, for joining me again on super short notice.
Thank you for having me. Seriously, this was so fun.
No, absolutely. Anytime you want to talk about Tony, hop right on. We'll do it.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, and tell everybody where they can find you on social.
Yes, so I'm primarily on TikTok at Starks Nova. I'm also on Instagram at Katie S. Gleason. Maybe I should just make it the same handle one day. But KATIESGLEASON. And that's all I'm on for now. But yeah, I have a lot of fun stuff coming up. So stay tuned.
Yes, definitely give Katie a follow. Especially if you love, I mean, you were just doing like a whole bunch of Tony content, which I feel like is like perfect timing. And
Thank you. I have a ton more saved up that I need to get on editing because people are talking about it right now.
yes, do that. Do that. And everybody go follow Katie so that you can see all the wonderful content because she does such a great job doing the edits and everything. It's honestly so good.
Thank
And
you.
make sure you guys subscribe, follow, so you don't miss an episode of the podcast in the future. And see you next time. Bye.